Okay, so I'd like. Wonderful. So I'd like to call the public hearing meeting to order. We said the pledge at our last meeting. We just came out of another meeting. So I'd like to ask the clerk to do the roll call.
Councilman Coleman.
Here.
Councilman Paddock is absent. Deputy Councilwoman Sneesa. Here. Deputy Supervisor Annette.
Here. Okay, great. So thanks to everyone for being here. We are recording and live streaming tonight's meeting. This is the public hearing for the EEO application on Towpath Road. We are going to begin by, this is the continuation of that public hearing. We're going to begin by hearing from our applicants. They have made some updates to their application in between our last public hearing and now. So we're going to let them speak and present those changes and updates, and then we will open the public hearing. Before we open the public hearing, I'll say a few things about how we'll be conducting the public hearing and the order in which we'll be hearing from members of the public during that time. But first, I'd like to give the floor to the applicants.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brett Hockey. I wasn't at the initial public hearing, so I didn't have a chance to meet any of you guys. So I'll just give you a brief of who I am and my involvement in the project. I'm part owner of the Ackford Granary. I've lived in Ackford for 20 years with my wife and children. I've worked locally as a woodworker and project managed several barn and house restoration projects over the past 7 years. I absolutely love these barns, and I grew up on a farm in the Hudson Valley, working and playing alongside my 6 siblings in structures just like these. And I simply want to restore these things. I want to breathe new life. I want to ensure that they continue on so that future generations, my children included, can enjoy them. And if we all take a really good look at them, you can see they are clearly in demise. And in my opinion, by remaining inactive, we are willingly contributing to their demise, effectively erasing the history of these barns in Hamlet. I also understand that it's not quite that simple, and this is a very sensitive subject matter for everybody here. There hasn't been a business here in nearly 4 decades, and we want to change that, and that's caused some anxiety, and we get that. We are very sensitive to that. And I hope that through this process that you guys can understand the project better and our ambitions, and get to know Henry and me better. And then hopefully we can assuage some of those concerns. And lastly, I'd just like to say thank you for actually the questions and comments that have come in over the past couple of months. They, I think, have improved our project. I feel like you guys have spoken and we've heard you and we've responded. You know, we have formally responded to the town board, but tonight we're going to go over some of those changes so that everybody who's here can be brought to speed. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alan Duma. I'm with Bernier Layers Engineers. I'm going to go through basically the project plans, primarily the edits that were developed by Dutton Architecture, Kingston, and our office, Bernier Layers, Kingston. Basically, Dutton says the one color set, one color page set, And we have 4 sheets that are total part of our plans. Our sheets consisting of existing conditions, proposed conditions, utility plans, and detail. The Dutton architecture drawings basically primarily focus on the layout without going into granular detail that our plan get into. Most people have seen these before, but the most recent changes in response to comments include a few things. We added additional parking down here. And at the end of the additional parking, we added a hammerhead turnaround. So basically the hatched area is no parking turnaround area. We've also located a handicap accessible spot over here. We've done a little work with the footpaths. And in response to town engineers' concerns, we've modified our truck delivery area, which I'll go through a little more detail on our plans. We've extended our pull-in. Basically, any delivery trucks will be coming in here and backing into there. Generally, that's the overview of what Dutton Architecture's plans include. Green is obviously green space. Light gray is areas that are already or historically disturbed. The blue is the structures. The brown is wood chip pathways. The dark gray is pathways as well, but accessible pathways. And the other dark gray is new parking. So we've tried as best we can, both from an architectural perspective and an engineering perspective, I'll go through in a minute, to work into the existing site, roadways, pathways, old railroad grade, and as Fred mentioned, working with the buildings to help preserve them. So with that said, I'm going to lock this video up today. I'm going to go into our set. As I mentioned before, this drawing most of you seen before, it states the existing condition. Shows the site, shows the existing structures, shows the existing disturbed areas. Nothing really new to report here. On our proposed conditions, a couple major changes since the last set. Basically, we updated the parking as I mentioned. We've actually increased the number of spots available on the site while cutting down the number of spots that were actually required. If everyone recalls, before we were looking at asking to use 20 spots in the town use of parking, now we're only asking for 6. So we've added spots to the parking. The reason we're asking for less is twofold. Number one, we've added more on the site down here. The second thing is we've removed the wellness component. If you remember, there was the wellness component here previously. And we've also reduced the square footage on the second floor of the granary building, which is our co-work area. This has all been revised and now summarized in a updated parking space analysis and updated zoning compliance table based upon existing lot lines. I mentioned a few minutes ago, we also gave a bit more information on Scott Dutton's drawing regarding truck turnaround. This little inset and here basically shows how the truck movements work. This has been designed for, we're not expecting a full-size 53-foot semi-trailer for deliveries in an area such as this because hamlets like this are not geared towards that. Typically deliveries like this, or whether it's a food supplier like US Foods or Cisco, a beverage supplier, or say a linen service, they're going to be using box trucks, sprinter van type vehicles, regular vans, and if they are using a semi with a trailer, it's going to be a 28 to 33 foot up trailer. Basically, it's half a tandem, and we designed it around that. Past consultations I've had with various suppliers in the area, that would be the type of size they would use on a facility like this, and that's reflected here. There's 59 spots total required, 53 spots total provided. The 6 spots we're asking for, which which is summarized here as 6 spots through municipal parking, are all covered down here. One thing I didn't mention is that with the completion of the wellness component and less square footage on the second floor co-work space, we reduced the project flow also. So where the project flow before was 4,033 gallons, it's now 3,759 gallons. So the sewage disposal system area has been commensurately modified. System design has been submitted to and is under review by the Ulster County Health Department. As they are the agency that will be doing the review and approval of the sewage system. I should also note, and I've mentioned this before, the facility will be permitted on an annual basis by the health department as a New York State Sanitary Code Part 7-1 temporary residence and New York State Sanitary Code Part 14-1 food service establishment. So in addition to approving the sewage and the water, which is under development, they'll be doing the annual permit. It will also be regulated as a part 5-1 public water system, because it's serving water to the public. So currently the review is ongoing with the health department. Additional speeding permitting is ongoing with the DEC. Our drawings also include a bit more on the third page as far as utilities. Some of which I covered with the board before. On here, basically, for the most part, we're trying to do our utility work within existing disturbed areas. Obviously, we're doing utility work that makes sense as far as building to building. We're burying electric, which is shown here. In some cases, we've got pathways that we're trying to locate over top of areas that we're disturbing to bury, utilities. Obviously, the water is buried, the sewer is buried as well. That's generally shown on the utility plan, which also repeats the exact same sewage, water, parking conceptual on page 2. And then on page 4, our standard details, which we would typically expect on this project. For the most part, a lot of these are placeholders. The back landscape architecture is under development, but we provide basic printing details, accessible pathway details, gravel parking driveway detail, which are deck details, stormwater control for during construction. Our stormwater for the entire project, when developed, is less than an acre, and we try to be extremely careful in making sure that we show disturbed areas beyond what we'll probably actually disturb. So we're comfortable with the fact it's well under an acre, it's 9/10 of an acre. That pretty much covers most of the changes that were done in response to comments.
To kind of add parking, now that we are now halfway 3 ADA parking spots, which puts us in compliance with.
Right, we were in compliance before with the ADA parking because we need to provide 2 spots because we had under 50 spots on site. Now that we've got over 50 spots on site, for 50 to 75, we need 3 ADA spots. So we were in compliance with the earlier rendering with under 50 spots. Now we're in compliance with the 3 spots for 50 to 75 parking spots. So that's covered here as well. Thank you for mentioning that. I think that pretty much covers most things. One thing we also did in response to comments from the town engineer was we clarified a bit more about the truck turnaround. We did demarcate the employee parking versus the general public parking. We also demarcated signage will be provided, which will be part of the planning board review. We more or less do a on-site traffic routing and parking plan. We did note that here's one place, here's the employee entrance. Employee entrance, employee parking, employee can exit through here along with general public parking. Entrance and exit is through here. We provided a fence for right now. We're conceptualizing a split rail type fence to respond to earlier board concerns that we don't want people just backing on towpath road. So we basically channelized the parking by one access point here, one access and egress point here. As we get to the planning board, that's something we will go through with the planning board, and at some point we meet with the highway superintendent regarding that as well.
And then Henry's gonna jump in.
Okay.
Greetings, everybody. Good to see you again. I had an opportunity to speak with some of the residents around the property. And there were a lot of questions about who we are and why we're doing this. So just wanted to take a moment to address some of those more general questions about why we're doing this project and who we are. I'm not from here. I come from New Jersey, lived in the area for about 5 years, and obviously fell in love with it for the reason that many people do, nature, and the aspects of the community. What I do is mostly open restaurants. I've done that mostly in the city. Predominantly, they're known for being very sustainable proof of concept for hospitality. We were the first Scope 3 carbon neutral restaurant group in New York. We opened the first and only completely trash-free restaurant in the United States. We've done, pop-ups with kind of positive chefs around the world. And I just finished a degree in sustainable design, build, and engineering. So that's my thing. And to a large degree, why I got excited about the ways in which these buildings could be preserved and adaptively reused. I also just wanted to read, if you wouldn't mind, I read an article when I first moved up here. It was written in 2016 about something that was called HARP, which was the Hamilton Accord Revitalization Project that some of you were on. And I just want to read a few quotes because I think it sets up what's at stake here really well. Once a thriving transportation hub with a combination of businesses, residents, and community institutions, Accord Main Street has been beset by vacant houses and abandoned businesses. Walter Levy approaches fellow members of the Town Historic Preservation Commission with the feeling that something needed to be done to save the hamlet. The mission: to restore and rejuvenate Accord's Main Street by working with Main Street residences, businesses, organizations, and local government agencies to come up with ways to develop and interpret Main Street historical ties to the canal, O&W rail trail, increase access to the hamlet's scenic waterfront, and identify adaptive reuses for derelict sites. In sum, the project aims to revitalize Accord's Main Street as a vital residential and commercial place where residents and visitors can come together to live, work, shop, and play. Quote, we need an anchor that will bring people in. Years back, we had a barber shop and the grocery and the hardware store in Agway. People got together downtown and spent time with their neighbors. We need something, maybe a great cafe where people can read the paper and chat and play on the internet that can help restore that sense of community. County planner Dennis Doyle, you can do this. Other towns have done it and you can too. So I read that and maybe got a little bit too excited, but I do think this vision of restoring the historic structures and all people, and there were several dozen of them that came together to work on that, was very exciting. There are a lot of buildings in this area that haven't made it. I'm sure many of you know 5 Main Street no longer there. Building in the back of this site no longer there. The old ship's galley and the Chinese restaurant burned down. For most of the past 100 years, there was actually, a restaurant there, including fairly recently. Obviously this area, these buildings were, dozens and dozens of people coming to work at the old feed mill. So the plan, our plan, is to build up a series of businesses that would open up the space back to the public, prevent the buildings from falling down, try to kind of turn the corner on this area, which, 8 towpath burned down, 4 towpath. I don't know if you know the blue building, but it's in pretty rough shape. 2 towpath is on the way to falling down. The large buildings, the coal barn, there's structural issues. Coal barn needs stabilization. The building back here is already fallen down, and obviously 11 towpath. We all drive past it, and it's working out a lot. So the big first picture is restoring this to communal use with the idea of building an inn in these buildings, 2 towpath, the tall barn, a restaurant, and the granary. There's an idea for a children's art school in one of these spaces. And then critically, the bike shop. We want to fix bikes, rent bikes, sell bikes. There is no climate positive transition without widespread adoption of micromobility. And obviously, as we all know, we're in a climate crisis. That is a big part of the motivation behind this project. Certainly anything that I spend time on, and we hope that if this project happens, it can be an example not only of all the carbon savings of keeping these buildings from falling down and all the new carbon costs of construction, but actually a carbon neutral operation that is fossil fuel free in the kitchen, where we can actually utilize in the construction process some of the sustainable building methods that are fairly common elsewhere and should be more and more in place. We hope that if we're able to pull this off, that it can be one of the greenest construction projects in the state of New York. We were very fortunate and able to win $500,000 to help with the stabilization of these buildings from the Mid-Hudson Regional Development Council. They liked the sustainability commitment. They liked the attempt to revitalize Main Street. But their bottom line is jobs. The town of Rochester, if the census data is correct, and I'm not 100% sure that it is because it is incomplete, suggests that 85% of the people who work here actually leave town for their jobs. If the data is correct, town has fewer businesses in Marbletown, fewer businesses in Hurley, fewer businesses in Olive, but we're seeing Navinock pretty much everywhere in this region. And we committed to the Mid-Hudson Regional Development Council is that we would create at least 18 jobs on the site, which is doable even with the smaller scope. As you guys who've been following this know, the project keeps getting smaller, but we're still at the point where we believe that we can create not the dozens and dozens of jobs that used to be here, but something substantial and that would make a big difference in the hamlet. A lot of the residents who are here, there is an underemployment issue, and we hope that that can be healthy to have people in town walking around using the site, it is not terribly easy. I job around here. I know from the market, we employ just over 10 people, all of whom are locals, many of whom are local high school students that work at it as a summer job and have come back now 2 summers in a row, and it's that's not a small part of this. We also at Fort Towpath are doing some workforce housing for the people working on site. It's not as much workforce housing as we originally envisioned. The site without municipal water and sewer does have limitations about what we can actually do here. But I believe, and I could be wrong about this, but it's the first and only project in the town of Rochester to provide workforce housing to the people that work there. So that's maybe not as much as everybody has wanted, but it is, you're doing something. And then one other thing about program that has slipped my mind, but obviously, what brought us together around this was community sustainability and health. It is disappointing to cut the wellness center, but we do believe that does make the project smaller. It is fewer jobs, so there will be less of an impact, but it will also be less of an impact on all the things that people are concerned about when it comes to traffic and noise. Just wanted to say on noise really quickly, we're actually not asking for any of the kind of allowances that the Speedway or Arrowwood or Crescent Hen, we're not actually asking for that carve out. So our proposal is to follow code, which is to keep decibels to a certain level at the property line. And we're happy to install limiters on any kind of outdoor music or people sitting at picnic tables to make sure that we would never be in breach of code. And we've already agreed to that. We proposed cutoff times in our submissions to the town board. And about traffic, this project's been going on for a long time, but a little over a year ago, we had a gateway meeting with the county planner, and I can't speak for them. It's not really our decision how things like stop signs and crosswalks are handled, but you know, Dennis Doyle and the highway superintendent seemed to indicate that for the county road, they had a plan. Again, a little bit beyond our scope to decide how the streets work, but I know there was some concern that you know, it would be difficult or more dangerous. We can all acknowledge this is incredibly dangerous at the moment, and the hope would be if this project moves forward that this intersection and going to the post office would become much safer than this. So thank you all for already coming twice, and you know, happy to answer any questions and look forward to hearing everybody's feedback about the proposal.
Thank you. So we're going to open the public hearing portion where we invite members of the public to speak. I just want to say a couple of things about how we're going to conduct the public hearing. First, we have a list that was at the door that people could sign up for and put your name on that list. If you put your name on that list, we're going to start the public hearing by calling on the names on this list in order. After that, we will ask the participants that are patiently waiting on Zoom if they would like to speak. At which point we can see if there's anyone else who hasn't spoken that would like to speak. And then if that happens and everyone who wants to speak has spoken once, and there's anyone that would like to speak again, you may, but we ask that we allow everyone a chance to speak one time before anyone speaks two times. The other thing I'd like to say is that your comments are to the town board. So the decision for the zoning request is to the town board. So the public hearing is the town board's public hearing. So when you're speaking as a member of the public, you are speaking to the board. We will not answer questions at this time. We are here to listen. You may ask questions as part of your statement, but just so you know, we will not be answering those questions at this time. Also, I think the last public hearing was conducted very respectfully, and I really applaud that and respect that. And we just ask that we have basic, you know, that respect for each other in our comments and understanding that these are complicated conversations that we're having. And it's, you know, it can be, these are difficult things to talk about, but I think we're all here we're here to listen, and this is a community, so let's approach it with that if we can. And so at the end of the public hearing, we will be, once everyone has had a chance to speak, we will be adjourning the public hearing meeting portion of our stack of meetings tonight. After that, we have an audit meeting where we might, depending on what the board decides, we might decide to have a discussion with the applicants during that part of the meeting. So I just wanted to let the members of the public know that if you wanted, if we will discuss that in the meeting, but that could happen at the audit portion of the meeting. We will stream that portion of the meeting if we decide to have that conversation, but I just wanted to let everyone be aware that that's where you would hear us have a discussion if we do have a discussion tonight. So with that, I will call on the first person on the list, Jay Martin.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jay Martin, and I have lived at 18 Towpath Road for 37 years. And I have a lot of concerns about this project, as I mentioned at the last meeting, and since that time, I have a few more concerns. We've had some insight into who this LLC is, but on this proposed building table of uses, it's under the aegis of the Oberon Group. Just kind of interestingly enough, the playwright and poet Shakespeare wrote some 38 plays, 14 of which were comedies, and one of them was A Midsummer Night's Dream. And in that play, there's a character named Oberon, and he is the king of the fairies. So I would like to know who the king of the fairies is here. This Oberon group is smoke and mirrors right now, and we have no names, no faces. I think I need some clarification on that. So members of the board, maybe somewhere along the line, you can get that back to me. I'm also concerned about a possible conflict of interest. I had a wonderful student years ago named Rebecca Paddock. Her family had a bicycle shop on Route 209 because I took mine there for repairs and tune-ups. We also have a person of that surname on the board. And with the history of that family in that business, I would hope there'd be no conflict of interest and maybe some kind of, I don't know, fudging on voting just because of the history of that family in that bike business. I see here that one of the buildings says mercantile and parenthetically bike shop. So I don't know, but I see a potential for conflict of interest. After the last meeting, I had occasion to speak with the engineer, Alan DeMont, and we spoke about the sewer system. I had some concerns. I'm glad to see, I think somebody must have listened because they took the wellness center away, which was going to be the structure closest to the sewer system, which somehow just didn't seem to mesh. The engineer told me upon my question with the main tank and then two reservoirs, he said they must work in tandem. Yes, he said no. I said, well, how does that work? He said, well, if the first one doesn't work, then we go to these others. And it seems that at that point, the damage has already been done. If this sewer system hasn't worked, well, now we have to go and change it, go to the other. Logic tells me that damage has already been done by the time they move to that new or additional septic system. I also had occasion to speak with the architect, Scott Dutton. And as many of you know, I know it's an adage, but there's no second chance to make a first impression. Are you all familiar with the idea of nonverbal communication? Two solid lines down the middle of the road means you don't pass. Broken line on your side means you can pass. Well, I just thought, based on Mr. Dutton's business card, I would be wary because it's obvious he cuts corners. So let's just keep an eye on that. I'm also concerned about this rather blasé term, unconditioned event space. Is that carte blanche then? Are there going to be any range to pull back on this? I don't know what unconditioned means. It sort of seems like, well, here's carte blanche, a blank card, do as you will. I think we need some parameters there. I think we need some regulations, some restrictions. There's also been some misinformation that's been parlayed. We were told that the current parking area for the former Chinese restaurant / Ship's Galley is blacktop. That is absolutely incorrect. You can go over there and dig in there with your foot and you'll be right in dirt and mud. I'm very concerned about that because I have pictures, which I'll gladly share, of the July 7th 3 inches of rain, which shows the water going from the former lot of the Chinese restaurant right across the road to Tobacco Road. And I have pictures of 2 cars going through that. One guy's creating weight as if he's driving a boat. But that's a very real concern, this wastewater, because right now the present system is not handling it very well. We have had an unprecedented amount of rain, but I'd be happy to share those pictures with you anytime you wish. So I have these very real concerns. That was a very nice presentation that Mr. Rich made. I'm just kind of surprised since he spoke with neighbors that didn't speak with me because I am the nearest neighbor and my property line runs right down with his property line. I find that unusual. He spoke with neighbors, but I am the nearest, and I never saw the gentleman. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Thank you. Mr. Martin, you may submit those pictures by emailing them to the town clerk if you'd like the board to see them, and they can be part of the public record. Alana Blum.
Okay, I'm on of 5 significant of 10 years. I would like to read the letter that we submitted to you guys last week on behalf of the upwards of almost 100 people that co-signed it with us. For those people who aren't present, perhaps watching online, or will be watching the video after the fact, I feel like it's important that it be heard out loud, even if you guys yourselves have read it already. So here we go. All right, a private developer, Accord LLC, is proposing a multi-use commercial development on the site of the old granary on the corner of Main Street and Granite. We are supportive of the opportunity that restoring these important and historic buildings present. Truly, like most of the people on this support that. We also want to ensure that the town board considers the interests of the entire community when voting on the proposed EEOD, Economic Enterprise Overlay District designation, an amendment to the zoning map. We have determined that the proposed scope is far larger than the site can accommodate, and that this will negatively impact the amenity and quality of life for residents in the town of Rochester. Further, the significant traffic increase and environmental impacts are not being properly studied and thought out. Issues to be considered include the following. The increased occupancy of the site will be many times greater than what currently exists in town. The occupancy load is in excess of 200 people. The above occupancy is to be served by less than 50 car parking spaces, fewer than the code requirement in order to reduce construction costs. The associated traffic represents a significant increase in the number of vehicles on Main Street, the impact of which has not been studied. Noise and light pollution will impact the adjacent residential areas that exist on 3 sides of the development. The effect of noise and pollution on the larger community is a concern. A proposed new bike trail and public footpath disrupts the existing amenity of adjoining residential properties, and a less disruptive alternative has been identified. The expressed desire for the developers to avoid environmental oversight during construction as required by the EPA. The future potential for the site to be used as event space. The lack of scrutiny regarding the parking space requirements, as there is no allowance for some uses, the gallery space, and other uses are underserved, restaurant, bar, co-work space. The code required number of ADA spaces is not met. We realize it is now met. I have an addendum to notify that. The town board is considering waiving code requirements in order to promote development. These requirements are in place for the protection of the community at large, not just for the property developers. Other similar developments in town have been held to these requirements. For example, the board is considering allowing non-conformity with the code required amount of on-site parking so that the developers can limit the area of disturbance to under 1 acre and avoid the cost of environmental oversight during construction as required by the EPA. The stormwater pollution prevention plan is designed to protect the community's water resources, including the nearby Rondout. Parking spaces as shown on the proposed site are undersized and not to code. The town board has said it will accept the developer's traffic assessment in lieu of an independent and comprehensive traffic report. For these reasons, we request that the town board carries out its due diligence and considers the interests of the broader community by imposing the following binding conditions as a requirement for granting the board's development. Comprehensive traffic study should be completed by an independent consultant to determine the estimated increase in automobile, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic. Car parking on the site should be as required by the town of Rochester. There should be no outdoor sound stage and no amplified music permitted outside. That the site is not to be used as event space due to the limitations of car parking and effects of noise and light pollution. Lighting code requirements with regard to dark skies to be observed and enforced. Proposed bike trail and public footpath to circumnavigate the existing residential properties. Green buffers to be planted between parking areas and along boundaries to adjacent residential properties, as required by code. This project needs to be viable in order to exist. However, its operation and the enjoyment of guests should not be at the expense of the quality of life for Acford residents. We request that the board ensures that there is not the potential for that harm. Furthermore, there is ongoing confusion within the community and even among town board members regarding the implications of granting the EEO and the designation of the town board as an agency. It has not been stated clearly the degree to which the approved plan can be amended by the planning board in response to further public hearings with regard to car parking, noise restrictions, and overall programming and occupancy. It is also unclear as to why the applicant requires the change in the EEO. This plan cannot be voted on until the board members and the public fully understand the implications of this change. So the addendum we added after reviewing the application materials from, I guess it was last week. We recognize that since the initial writing of this letter, the applicant has reduced the scope by eliminating the wellness center and reducing the size of the co-work space. They have also increased the number of parking spaces. However, these changes do not alter the concerns regarding the overdevelopment of the site, and the parking does not satisfy code requirements. Specifically, that the restaurant parking does not apply. There is no allowance for parking in the bar, cafe, and gallery, and the co-work parking is insufficient. Furthermore, the water supply and wastewater does not comply with the requirements. Sincerely, the undersigned, we have made for signatures of residents of town of Rochester, and the majority of the people who live within 500 feet. And I can give Kate a copy of the updated sign.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Beckman Rich.
Hi, I'm Henry's father. I was being work for a long time. And it's a thoughtful process. And if the project does go forward when this thing's been worked out, I think it will be a kind of great community for him.
Reagan Kramer.
And just full disclosure, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an architect, I can't speak to article anything or the EPA or any of that. But I do know that we moved here more than 2 years ago, just before the pandemic, not after. And one day we went up to the Hotel Granite, up on Granite Road, and ran into someone who was working there and told us how when he was a kid there was a school here and shops and businesses, and it was like, wow, it felt like the Twilight Zone. Like he was talking about a chord that I had a hard time wrapping my head around, because when we got here before the market was open, there was Charlie's Antique Store and Ruth's pottery shop, and unless I'm mistaken, well, yeah, on Main Street, there's the grocery store on the other side of 209, but it was sort of hard to imagine that there used to be a school and that the train station, to now, of course, an Airbnb used to actually have people coming for the weekend and all of that. That this, according to the owners of the Airbnb, when we visited on Heritage Day, they said this was sort of the tail end of the Bush Belt. And so it's been sort of a mind exercise, like, wow, this town used to be a little more bustling, had more people, had more shops and things. Nobody implied that it was ever like too much and it had turned into a city or, crime ridden or anything. So I just think something for us, it's really nice having a market, being able to shop in town. I think it might be nice to have a restaurant in town and things like that. Of course, all the concerns about pollution and all that have to be met. I'm not arguing that in any way, but just the principle of the thing, the idea of having those buildings that are basically collapsing, right? I don't see any other way to describe them, being revived as opposed to like building something entirely new there, but to kind of preserve the barns and the buildings that are there and turn it into something functional instead of something abandoned. I think it would be nice, but it would help the town thrive and continue to move forward with the history that it has of boarding houses and schools and being a place where people live and work.
Okay. Katie, would you let me know how to say that name? I'm sorry, you said Noplatarski. Okay.
Hello, my name is Katie Noplatarski. I live at 46 Towpath Road, a short walk into town. Thank you for holding this hearing. Let me start by saying that I do want this Accord Greenery project to go forward. I believe that this project, with its combination of facilities and programming, done responsibly, has the potential to be a vital community hub of sorts for our area and beyond. We are all, no doubt, aware of what's being called an epidemic of loneliness and social isolation all around our country, and aware of the impact this has on our lives, the lives of children, elders, negatively impacting life expectancy, physical and mental health, as well as day-to-day habits. Now more than ever, in my opinion, as places of in-person connection close down, we urgently need places where people can meet face-to-face, strengthen social connection, enjoy cultural and physical activity, and connection with nature. These spaces can also serve to strengthen the local economy, all around strengthening the fabric of our lives, and especially for children. The Granary Project, I believe, has the wonderful potential to be such a place, and I am more than grateful for that possibility. Mind you, there can also be negative effects of development. This is why I signed the community letter. We need to be certain that there are no spillover effects imperiling the quality of life for area residents. It is also imperative that this be a place of belonging for all. However, I hope and believe that the town, applicant, and residents can address these concerns and simultaneously work to bring this project to fruition in a way that is economically viable for the applicant and enriching for local community and beyond. I believe that it is within our power and the board's power to help facilitate the creation of this project and the benefits it can provide. In my opinion, we have a responsibility to each other, and especially to our children, all our children, to provide the opportunity for connections that are essential for our well-being. It would be wonderful to have such a dream that could happen right here in our little town of Accord. I believe that we should all work together towards that goal. Thank you.
Dave Roberts.
Hi, I'm Dave Roberts. I live at 5 Scenic Road. I've been the resident of Accord for 10 years. And I do appreciate Henry and Ren's presentations this evening to understand the motivation and background of their inspiration of the development. And I certainly appreciate the amount of work that goes into below my comments regarding the proposed Greenery project by Accord LLC, I fully support the development of this important historic site. However, it is evident that the proposed scope is greater than the site can accommodate. There's not all the necessary utilities and support functions within, especially the required parking. The applicant has acknowledged the overdevelopment by reducing the scope. removing the wellness facility and reducing square footage of the co-work space. However, the revised scope still exceeds what the site can accommodate, as evidenced by the following. The parking calculations do not comply with current TOR code, and several of the proposed uses are not accommodated. For example, there's no parking allowance for the coffee shop. There is no parking allowance for the gallery. There is no parking allowance for the bar. There is no parking allowance for the event space. There is no parking allowance for employee housing independent of the employee parking. Long-term housing parking should be calculated in addition to employee parking. I just heard that there's actually 2 parking spaces in for 18 employees. If these uses are complementary in their utilization of parking spaces, a schedule of opening hours, days of operation needs to be provided by the applicant so that the town board can fully understand parking strategy. Parking calculation for the restaurant is not code, and alternative has been proposed, 1 space for 3 seats, without supporting documentation. I'll just correct that. Actually, in the December 2022 meeting, Alan did say that it was the 1 space for 3 seats was representative of surrounding codes, which is I researched my town of Warson, and they all follow the same code as us. The restaurant square footage is not provided on the parking space summary, a requirement of the TOR EEO code. The restaurant bar is described as 2,361 square feet in a proposed table of uses. That's from Scott Dutton's April 2022 document, which would require a total of 67 parking spaces for these uses as opposed to the 25 spaces proposed. That's a significant difference. The increased number would accommodate associated staff, which the current calculation allows. The parking for the co-work space is calculated on an inappropriate office space model. The code requirement of 1 space for 200 square feet is based upon the density of workers in a traditional commercial office space. Co-working space is typified by greater density. One reason why the co-worker typology is more popular. Industry standard for co-work space is about 75 square feet per seat, with a range of 50 to 100 square feet per person being in the room. The delivery truck part indicates that it's here. Delivery trucks having to approach from Granite Road. Will all delivery vehicles be redirected to Scenic Road and Granite Road? That's the question I have. Is this the best and safest solution, having a curb cut at the intersection of Granite and Towpath roads? The width of the proposed median strip between the parking area adjacent to Towpath Road should be determined by what is safest for traffic traveling on Towpath Road. The design solution should not be driven by the stated desire to avoid triggering the need for developing stormwater pollution prevention, as was discussed in the December 2022 town board presentation. I have a link to the YouTube video and the times in that video where this was discussed. The applicant's engineer was suggesting a minimal intervention so as not to trigger the 180 requirement. The site plan does not show the utilities on adjacent parcels as required by the Town of Rochester Code, section 148.10.1. For example, the septic tank in Leach Field and Excellent Towpath Road is less than 140 feet from the development's well. The septic tank in Leach Field at 12 Towpath Road is less than 150 feet from the development's well. The proposed reserve leach field, I'm not sure if this has changed on this topic or not, but this is the one that's adjacent to 15 Granite Road, is within 60 feet of the well at 15 Granite Road. The above conditions do not satisfy Ulster County Health Department requirements for minimum distances between leach fields and water supply if used for food service. The applicant stated that activities at the granary will produce discernible noise up until 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday and up until 11 p.m. on Friday through Sunday every week of the year. That's in the Bring Your Own Glarus letter to the town supervisor. The town of Rochester Cove Economic Enterprise Overlay District requires that the new use be compatible with adjacent existing land uses. I wonder if the board considers generating noise every day of the year to be compatible with the pre-existing residential use that surrounds the proposed development site on both sides. What is the proposed mechanism for enforcing the existing noise restrictions on the site as delineated in the current TOR code? Without expressed penalties, there is no incentive for applicants to comply. Just go by what we've seen in adjacent towns in the non-compliance with those rules. The increase in traffic was described in the December 2022 town board presentation as insubstantial, and yet the engineers representing the applicant's interests calculated an increase in traffic on Main Street by 67%. This should warrant an independent traffic study to determine the impact of this increase of granite, scenic, towpath intersections and provide best solutions for handling increased car, pedestrian, bicycle, and delivery traffic. Size of the parking spaces do not comply with code, but reduced in size to accommodate the applicant's stated desire to keep disturbance on the site less than an acre. Other recent developments in the town of Rochester have also comply with the code. The Accord LLC is being granted this dispensation without showing any hardship except that they do not want to incur the additional cost of a stormwater pollution condition. There's also a minor reference to the public meeting. One of the described uses for the proposed development is an event space. Has the board considered the implications of this use as opposed to just a restaurant bar? This use should be struck from the development's list as it is a separate and independent use. The reason I've gone into this in detail is because of the last point that I want to make, which is there's one essential question that has not been answered through, though it's been asked many times of the town board. In the event that the town board approves the change from the EPOD, and the planning board requires substantial changes to the proposed plan as a result of it. To what degree can the planning board push back this plan, this thing? As I've stated before, the development will have significant and lasting impact on Hamlet. The purpose of my writing is to highlight issues that have not yet been addressed by the applicant and town board, and to ensure that the interests of everyone in the community are considered.
Okay, Renee Schneider.
It's Vinnie Snyder, and I live at Pleasant Scenic Road. We've been here for more than 30 years. And I did sign this community letter. I am for development of redevelopment of the granary, concerned about the size and scale. And the impact for, I just want to share, I live on Scenic Road, and that is a cutoff from Granite to get to Main Street. That traffic will increase substantially. No mention was made of that when we talked about the danger just of this area here by the post office. That intersection is so dangerous, and it swings shots around, cars come very quickly. There really isn't any kind of oversight of that. Sometimes you see a state trooper sitting at a 30-mile drop on Granite Road, but I'm asking the town for an independent traffic study as it affects not just Main Street, not Towpath, but all of the roads leading here up into 209. There's two very dangerous intersections. I've had cars crash into they used to crash into my fence almost every once a year. And so we put reflectors on the fence. We told our children when they were little that couldn't go into the yard, that in our yard that was by the road. And it's a two-way street that's not marked, and it's very, very dangerous. I mean, you can see cars having to pause by the first curve by the barn entrance when another car passes, and that traffic will increase substantially. So I asked the board to take the traffic into consideration before approving this change of code.
David Stoltz.
Well, I'm David Stoltz, I live at 31 Main Street here in Anacortes. And I've lived there going on 60 years. And I say that Henry Rich is a good neighbor. He's my neighbor on both sides. And I look forward to the town board passing this project smoothly and without too much aggravation to people. And I'd like to say that previous projects that were suggested for this site, if this site fails, I don't know what happened in the future, but in the past, it was recommended junkyard for a space, a garage, a recycling center for Worcester County recycling beyond. And I don't think these people would be very good neighbors to any of us. And I think that this project should move forward. I think it would be great for the town, and I'd like to see 18 more jobs. I'd like to be some light to the STEM community. Thank you very much. I spoke before, say more, but I might give someone else a chance.
Ora Bergman.
Across the street from another company. We've been in 5 years. I'm going to read a letter from Iris Stern that was submitted to y'all that couldn't be here to read. Dear Ms. Grunberg, please accept these written comments and include in the record of the public hearing for the Economic Enterprise Overlay held on July 27, 2023. I regret not being able to attend. My name is Iris Stern, and I live at 277 Towpath Road, within walking distance of the hamlet. My family and I have lived here for 36 years and are very familiar with the parcels in question. I am also a professional environmental planner with decades of experience working in small towns throughout Worcester County and the Catskills, and currently serve as a professor in city and regional planning at Pratt Institute. The EEO provision in the town's zoning code 140-18.1 is intended to provide flexibility to foster economic opportunities in the town. However, as written, it can also be abused to the detriment of the residents adjacent to or in proximity to the assembled parcels in most places in the town, which are most places in the town. While I may agree with the provision itself as being too open-ended and potentially political, it is currently part of the law and being tested in the hamlet with at least 5 parcels. It is my understanding that this is the first EEO application, and therefore the actions and deliberations of the town board are precedent setting. This is a critical aspect of the considerations of this public hearing. Economic development by its very nature will have impacts on natural resources and community character. The zoning code leaves it up to the town board and then the planning board to determine these impacts. Without technical studies, especially in regard to water demand and wastewater volume, it would be irresponsible for either party to consider and or approve any application. Unfortunately, the zoning law section does not include a requirement that EEOs be serviced by public water and or sewer or Board of Health approvable alternatives. This should be a basic requirement for any EEO proposal when considered by the town board. Although we do not have public water or sewer in the town, it would leave it to a developer to provide should the town wish to proceed with an EEO. In this case, as you know, the hamlet of Ackworth does not have central water or sewer and invariably will have impacts to groundwater usage. All properties in the hamlet are on individual wells. And assuming septic systems will be used, input of sewage into the ground and same groundwater. It has been well documented that most properties in the hamlet rely on substandard septic systems. Without a groundwater analysis for water supply and sustainable yield, and a soils analysis and modeling of wastewater flows, it is irresponsible for the town board to grant this designation. The precedent of allowing a developer to acquire parcels anywhere in the town undermines the protections afforded by zoning district restrictions throughout the town. The hamlet district is an obvious place for economic activity, as history has shown. However, until public water and or sewer is provided in the hamlet, responsible growth cannot occur. Waiving zoning. Waiving zoning restrictions and increasing density while relying on wells and septics will harm neighbors and others relying on spills and groundwater. As a planner, my suggestion is to be proactive rather than reactive in economic development. If we want development in the hamlet, start with public infrastructure, not with developer-generated proposals that can only harm existing residents and devalue their property. Furthermore, while the mill barns are special and adaptive reuse preferred, the other parcels are simply residential parcels whose use can be accommodated by the underlying hamlet district regulations. In this particular case, more luxury short-term rentals and the low-pay jobs generated are not what this town needs. So I don't see any particular appeal to this proposal enough to waive restrictions and stress out neighbors. Let's not encourage people to buy multiple house parcels and apply for EEO zones just to outsmart the underlying zoning in our town. Let's not approve development proposals, especially those that exceed the underlying restrictions without engineering analyses for water, sewer, and other important impacts. Let's not encourage the possibility of sweetheart deals between developers and the town board. While that might not be the case here, the code sits out there with a huge loophole in it for our collective future. I encourage the town board to reject this EEO application and due to the lack of central water and sewer and unmitigatable impacts. Town board should be thinking hard regarding how we improve the hamlet. A water system would separate septic effluent from wells, especially shallow wells. A centralized wastewater system can be a community septic or septic district will eliminate sewage contamination of the groundwater. Reacting to proposals is poor planning. Conducting a sanitary survey, well septic solutions would be a much better step in the right direction. Sincerely, Ira Stern.
Stephanie Ives.
Hi, I'm Bethany. I think I know almost everybody, but I also live there with Laura. We've actually only lived in the house 4 years. We've been in the area. But since it's on the record. I really appreciate my neighbors who are exacting in their analysis, including Ira Road, who couldn't be here. And like Reagan, I am more literary mind, so that's my contribution. The current local law, number 3, describing the qualifications for and reasoning behind an economic enterprise overlay district, calls for the development of, quote, well-configured public spaces dedicated to social interaction, recreation, and the visual enjoyment of all residents, operating, quote, in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood. This strikes me as not only a righteous objective, but also a reasonable expectation for any business, particularly in a small town such as ours. Civic-minded growth ought to be top priority for the town council and all committees involved in decisions that affect community life. In a February 7th Time Union article from earlier this year, I read how Henry Rich reflected that it was his development group's desire to, quote, talk about what all the different members of the community want for the project moving forward. So I take this on good faith, and I'm glad to have the chance to participate again in this important ongoing conversation. What's at stake in our discussions of the EEO law and granting privileges of enhanced flexibility to Accord LLC is really a question of what community growth actually is and involves. When we speak of putting the language of the law here, quote, civic buildings, open spaces, and other visual features to act as landmarks, symbols, and focal points for community identity. What do we imagine? Does the concept of community depend on an acknowledgement of interdependence, a common source of energy, care, belonging? Surely community identity is something more than a population cluster on a map or a tax base. I would argue that a community grows by ensuring universal access to essential resources, like housing, healthcare, and food that everyone can afford. A community also grows by way of social rituals, cultural exchange, and celebration that enhance deeper understanding and respect between folks. When we make meaning together by participating in something larger than ourselves, we activate processes of profound connection that surpass what's required for survival. The reason why these more abstract ideas, like public use, social interaction, community identity, and harmony, are all evoked in this law, is because concepts related to sharing are fundamental to civic life, not profit or consolidated wealth. So I want to go off my prepared remarks scripts a little bit just to say that I appreciate the conversations that have been happening among the community of neighbors, immediate neighbors, and close by neighbors, and with the developers. I've had numerous personal conversations. I appreciate that this project seems to be in development, and I actually can't keep up, even though I've really tried. I spent a large portion of the summer keeping up, I thought, and I'm already behind again, with what the project involves or entails. And it delights me. I hope this is not mistaken for sarcasm, because it couldn't be farther. It delights me purely that the word communal is used with this project, and that ideas are being offered in this meeting about what might be useful to community stakeholders who may not come to this community with a lot of privilege, such as schools. Why not make it into a publicly available school? Or I know the idea of a library. A public resource sounds fantastic. I don't share anxiety about change in Accord. I also don't find action business at all. I'm not depressed. I'm excited that buildings can be refurbished, but I'm not depressed or afraid of them. And I am, quite the contrary, super excited that feeling it both like my wife are building places where I hope we'll all gather, like Herald Market around the corner, and the continued development of skate time. What I am concerned about is how gentrification poses an immediate threat of displacement to less privileged residents. I know that Accord LLC's legal representation doesn't care about gentrification. They made that really clear in the first 2 paragraphs of their letter to the town board. So I feel like I need to bring up that concern as a real valid concern, since it's been expressly stated as not a valid concern by the legal representation, which maybe you disagree with, but that's been stated. And I think that 18 or however many jobs are only as good as how well a person is supported, as in the, I don't know if the 18 jobs are coming from within the existing community. I don't know if those 18 workers live with their parents and don't have to pay rent, but I don't see it as just an opportunity to make minimum wage under potentially very stressful conditions. I see jobs as a way to participate in civic life, and I see employers as, well, maybe in a utopian way, as people who appreciate their workers by giving livable wages for Accord rent, which can be steep, and benefits and healthcare. So those are my wishes for the debate. And also I'm excited that some totally different truck fleet has been identified than what currently services Accord Market. But I do have some doubts about that, because I live right there and I see all the trucks servicing Accord Market, and none of them are the Sprinter vans or whatever. They're all the big truck retailers. So that just gave me a little moment of pause with regard to the concerns that my more detailed oriented neighbors brought up. But thanks everyone for this comment.
William Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, I'm William Pittsburgh. My wife and I live at 163 Towpath, and we've been there about 10 years. And I think everybody here would be excited about the redevelopment of the mills and repurpose them, and it'd be a great place to go. But at the same time, the EEO application is also a huge precedent. And we're also very concerned about our Rondout Creek and that sort of thing. And I think that there's no reason not to have a study and to have engineers look at it. And when it all comes down to it, this is really about somebody's business and money-making business. And I think this is the cost of doing business. And and I think I agree entirely with what Ira Stern wrote. And I just want to reiterate that does leave cause for a lot of questions and reconsideration. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so we've finished hearing from everyone that signed up on the sheet. Because everyone on Zoom has been waiting, I'm going to open the floor to them. And if anyone who hasn't spoken yet, who's in person, would like to speak after we open it up for Zoom, we'll have that opportunity. So anyone who's on Zoom, if you would like to raise your hand, if you'd like to speak. Just want to give it like a moment, because sometimes it takes a while. Okay, Anthony Crook?
Hi, yeah, thanks, Aaron. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, great. Well, hello, thanks for having me. We live, my name's Anthony, my family and I live at the Creamery, which is next door to the Granary. I think it was built around the same time. I actually thought we were the closest neighbours to it, but Jay said he was. Jay's bigger than me, so I'm not going to argue with him. We are generally, we're really excited about what this could be. We think it's a really inspiring project and there's a really talented team behind it. We know Henry's restaurants really well and he makes great restaurants and creates great social hubs. Scott Dutton, the architect, does amazing work. And if anyone needs reassuring of that, you should go and see the Fuller building in Kingston. It's which is an old building he restored and renovated, and it's just amazing. I don't know Ren's work, but I have to say I just get a good feeling from him. So we want this to happen in some form, and we want it to be successful for everyone's sake. We think it's exciting. I'll let others talk about the EEO because I honestly don't know the ins and outs of that. What I do know is that there are kind of guidelines that the board has to consider when reviewing the application. And the EEO application guidelines say there shouldn't be any detriment to nearby properties. The current application describes what we think could be detrimental to us and our neighbours, and I was hoping just to talk about a couple of those to get some reassurance or clarity at some point on them. The first one is the noise. The application talks about not making noise after 10 p.m. on weekdays and 11 p.m. on weekends. Our children go to bed at 8 p.m. and we're not far behind them, actually. We don't think it's fair that we should have to hear music at night or have noise that would keep us awake. So this to us and our neighbours would be a detriment. We'd like to see something more appropriate, perhaps 8 p.m. for noise. We think could be more appropriate considering that this is surrounded by houses. It's got houses on all three sides of it, residential, full-time homes. And 8 p.m. is a time that children go to bed, so that could be more appropriate. And it could be a nice gesture from them moving forward to make that time more appropriate considering their houses on every side of it. The other thing is the trail. Our home, the Creamery, was built on the O&W line. There's a loading dock. Some of you already know this. There's a loading dock that runs in the side of our building, and things could have been passed by hand from our house to the trains. This was abandoned 70 years ago, and all our living spaces face where this line used to be. And turning that into a public footpath, which has been mentioned, we feel would ruin our home. I talked about this at the last meeting, and again, extend the invite to anyone who's not sure about this. You can come and knock on our door anytime and see for yourselves. The rail line ran in a thin gap between our home and Marty Gibney's home, who I think's there tonight. This strip is like a thin strip that's about 60 to 80 feet wide. I was really encouraged, having said that, I was really encouraged by the language in the applicant's response, where they talked about our concerns. They talked about, well, Mike said, my client favours a request for partial rail trail relocation. The project team will work cooperatively with all parties to see if this can occur. However, the relocation is out. I'm paraphrasing here. The relocation is out of my client's egregious control. So the implication here is that it's not their decision. The response used the term out of our control. So someone might need to explain to me at some point how it isn't in the applicant's decision. It seems, and it seems they agree with us that about the damage it could cause, and in that they would favour requests to find alternative routes. So if they do feel this way, then they could say no. It's their land. So it seems to me 100% of that decision is theirs. I think a solution or a kind gesture to the town would be to offer a green buffer between these two residential lots, excuse me, and move forward with alternative routes for the trail. So I would urge the applicants to consider their choices they have in this. and urge them and the town not to degrade the residential nature of the hamlet and damage these two immediate neighbouring properties. And in the spirit of our community, move forward with alternative routes for the trail that don't do this kind of damage to people's homes. So, thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who are on Zoom who would like to speak at the public hearing?
Aaron, it's Mike Baden. I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge for the board and for the public and for the applicant. I'm not present tonight because I tested positive for COVID on Tuesday. I am in quarantine. So my apologies to everyone for not being present. I am watching this in real time and taking notes, but I'm not able to legally participate. So I just wanted to let everybody know why I'm not present, and thank you for your understanding.
Okay, feel better soon, Mike.
Thank you.
Anyone else on Zoom who'd like to speak for the public hearing? Okay, so I'd like to turn it back to members of the public in present who haven't spoken yet.
Hi, my name is Sheila Flanagan. I live on the creek, Mile Creek. And been there for about 45 years, maybe 50. And there have always been some issues. One issue, which is very important in this town, is homework. Another issue that's extremely important is an effective system for getting rid of septic material. That has always been a problem we talked about. Another thing has been the use of guns. And where I live, my first experience was a bunch of little boys who ran down the creek with a gun and shot one of the great gray herons lying along North Swenson, which I went over and got just so it could be rehabilitated. Recently, very strange things have been going on around my house. Yesterday, I usually get up and water things early in the morning at 7. And it was a shot when I went outside. Near me, gunshot. Well, okay. So at night, about 11 o'clock, I woke up and realized I had left a package of groceries on the front porch. And I better get them in before the raccoons came. And I opened the door. There were 2 shots across the street from me. One a little lower, another a little higher. And I called the police, who came right away. They were in that court action. And I'm not. There's a question of responsibility and how seriously you take things, and whether you feel they're addressed with you. All of these things go into your perception of what it's like in your community. And all of these things, to me, matter. I don't see them as being addressed. I don't see the issues of a good water supply, in a basis of rock shale, that there's a way of getting rid of septic matter that will not go contaminating one person's water supply to another. And also, why are people shooting? I don't know why people are shooting around me, but they are. So I just want to bring it up here. I'm not on any map because the line along the road curves along my part of the road, which is a curve, but it's all on the other side of it. And so I don't, feel I need to address all of that right now. But I care very much about the quality of the community here. And I think that anybody who promotes the idea of the Ship's Galley and has positive influence in the town of Accord doesn't know what they're talking about. You need to go and talk to the wives of the women who live in the Ship's Galley and find out what it was like welcoming their husbands back in again. So, I don't think we can afford to be too cavalier about them. Ship's Galley is not just a pretty name in a book. There's a tremendous history there. And, that's all I have to say.
So first, I just want to see if there's anyone that didn't speak that would like to speak. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm Hannah Roditi. I'm a co-owner at 42 Granite Road, my mother here, and spent time in the community and grew up in Accord, starting at the elementary school, used to be here. And I think there are really 4 key issues for me here. One is the groundwater issue, which is huge, and people have referenced that. Really concerned about just the capacity for absorption, the drain on groundwater. So this development affects everybody around it. It affects our property as well and our ability to live there. The second one is noise. This is huge. I'm just kind of in a state of outrage when I hear people talk about a development that could keep spewing noise into the community, into a residential community until 10 and 11 at night. I'm just in a state right now of outrage and shock about it. I have 3 children. I raised them in a community where there was a golf course that was built about a quarter mile away. And for a very short period, they experimented with having parties, noise, hosting noise at the golf course house, hosting, music and stuff that ran into the evening hours. There was no way my children could go to sleep. We were a quarter mile away. It was disruptive of our entire family. The idea of Accord turning into that and having to experience that is horrifying to me, absolutely horrifying to me. So, and then on top of that, and I'm not sure that I know the details of the law here, I had been hearing that there wasn't a noise ordinance on the books, which is also pretty extraordinary if that's true. And I think there should be one as soon as possible. Because the only way when I was living near that golf course, the reason they weren't able to continue with that is because neighbors complained and there was a noise ordinance. And so actually there was something that we were able to do about it. So yeah, I'm very concerned about an approval process that enables a development to go ahead and then there's nothing to enforce anything. This was raised about the truck sizes and things like that. And I just kind of wonder, what are all the enforcement, mechanisms involved? And so the noise issue is just untenable, completely untenable. It would destroy what is beautiful about Accord, which is that it's quiet, it's peaceful. It's very family friendly that way. The last thing that I'm really concerned about is as Ira Stern spoke about, is just the precedent setting nature of what the board is being asked to do in terms of the new kind of what is it called, the EEO, that designation, and the traffic, the change in traffic without any independent studies is extremely concerning. So it's really those 4 things. It's the
It's the groundwater issue, the water issue, the noise issue, the precedent-setting nature of it, and the traffic without any kind of independent traffic assessment.
One other,
I'm the next differ.
Okay.
I just wonder if the project, and I have no idea, viability of this project with the event-based portion of it is something that for them is economically viable, but it was something that I would certainly like to have considered. See the rest of the project, I think the idea of the shops, the restaurant, even the parking, the paths, everything I think is very positive. Of course, maintain buildings is really important. But I'd like to think that there's a way of it being viable without having the event-based portion of the project completed.
anyone else? Okay.
Yeah, hi.
Jay.
I'd like to address the board on a couple of things, and maybe Sheila can listen in. We are in an agricultural community, and there are growers here who applied for deer damage permits. Those permits allow the permittee to shoot, in this case, deer, up to 11:59 p.m. A DEC officer is supposed to be notified of this event, and the board and our neighbor could find out if there have been deer damage permits given in this area. If so, and how many? I heard 4 shots. But there are deer damage permits. They are legal, and DEC is in control of that. So let the board be enlightened on that, should you have not known about that. The other thing, having lived through the decades over there at 18 Towpath, I've seen various degrees of improvement and decay. Unless anybody walk out of here thinking I'm totally against that proposal, I am not. It is the scope and size that I'm concerned with because I am an immediate neighbor. As I said, I've seen various degrees of improvement, various degrees of decay. I'm concerned about my value property and any value that might be lost from whatever kind of activities take place there. But it's the size and the scope, as I suggested at that last meeting, my property runs the full length, their property runs the full length of my property and beyond. So I am concerned. I am not totally opposed. I don't want anyone walking out here thinking that, but I am very concerned about some lack of limitations in certain areas. And I have 3 wells, all of which are relatively close to the proposed sewage area. I do think it was a wise move to eliminate the wellness from the sewage area.
Okay, are there any other members of the public that would like to speak? Jay?
Yeah, one of the things, we have not discussed this, and I don't know under whose purview this is. But I'm out with my dogs every morning, letting them go poo poo pop pop. And trucks and cars go past 18 Towpath Road at much, much more than 35 miles an hour. I don't know whose purview it is to get the speed limit lowered within the town. I also made the suggestion at a Board of Education meeting. They talk about safety for the students. Well, the speed limit over there is 40 miles an hour. And some of these speed limits now are ridiculous. You go past the camp up there now with people walking on the road. And I don't know whether it's a county road, town road, or what. That's not my shtick. But I really think that we need to examine these speed limits and lower them down. Sometimes it's worth your life to try to back out of the parking lot at the post office.
Oh, yes.
You really need to examine that. And I don't know what the board can do about it, but it's a real issue. And now, all those who are in favor of lowering the speed limit, raise your right foot.
Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Aura?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak as myself. I have a thought. I work in construction in the area, and I'm working mostly in projects locally that are a lot smaller in scale, but I did work on the Kingsley Hotel in Kingston that this project reminds me of. It's smaller than that was. But I was there from the beginning to the end. It was like many years, and I appreciate how much goes into paying consultants, going through lots of changes. The design process for something of this scale is super, super involved. And I know that this process of engaging the town board and all the other committees and then opening up to the community is really involved. So I definitely appreciate that. And I've been involved in different aspects of it. I've also worked with Scott, doesn't know him. And I just want to just say that I also appreciate that this is in development, like my wife said, and I hope that there will be continued earnest accountability on the part of the developers, who I'm really excited to get to know more, who I've recently met or just met today, haven't yet, but I do feel like I'm not afraid of change, but I do just hope that, you know, long after something is built, there's maintenance, there's, you know, there's millions of relationships that have to carry on to keep a place healthy and responsible, like this stuff about trucks, you know, I've seen in Kingston just so many other issues about, you know, being real about what you can take care of. And I appreciate like all this amazing talk about sustainability in the project. And I know that also construction really can only happen as a community effort, and that it's like the sum total of the subcontractors and consultants who work in this area. And so I'm really excited to see what comes out of it. And I don't feel like I need to hold in my mind the developers to every single thing they've promised, but I do just hope that in the ongoing process that it grows into something connective and changing and like a learning process for everyone, and that it just does have a lot of accountability for a long time, that it's not an absentee situation in any way, which I've seen, and it's easy, it's totally easy, it's totally doable to have amazing, impressive plans drawn up and have a development happen in a completely distant way, and to exert force and create changes that ripple through communities in a real way that affects a lot of neighbors. And I've seen this in Beeston without real connection to it or accountability. So I really appreciate what I've witnessed so far that's like miles better than what I've seen, but I hope that will continue and grow. I really appreciate the town board's time and attention and all of the conversations that the community is having. So thank you.
Maybe you had your hand up.
What's your name?
Aura?
Aura? I think Aura kind of said what, better than I could have said it. So, just echo Aura's comments. I do want to add, I think we need to be very careful when examining sound. But that's something that should really be examined carefully. Because I agree that perhaps the way that it's allowed now might be disturbance that should not happen. It's not necessary. That said, I hope that and the water and sewage and the traffic and the rail trail and all these works out. And I appreciate the board's time very much. Not an easy decision, and also the developers and time.
Anyone else? Alana?
I would like to say that the format that is in place for these hearings is extremely frustrating. By law, I don't understand if it's like county mandated, state mandated. They're not being a back and forth in a group forum. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, amen. Agree to that.
So be that as it may, if there's any channels or opportunities down the road to visit that. We had asked for a group forum moderated by you guys. Mike said it was unethical. I think that's problematic. If there would be a third party that could moderate a dialogue in a format, anybody who wants to participate, not one-on-ones.
I very much agree with that. I think it would be very, very healthy. And I was on a community board in Brooklyn for a community, and part of their process in all community boards is that community presentation about projects of any sort. The process is that the board then gets to ask questions right then and there, and then the public then gets to ask questions. And then there's also a time which is public hearing like this, where there's no back and forth. And it would be great if somehow that could happen, because I think we'll just save a lot of time and even make it easier for the board.
Okay, just before you go again, Jay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak tonight? Or are we on our last comment? Anyone on Zoom? Okay, Jay, you're the last one.
That was a superb suggestion, because if you're talking about community and you have the type of dialogue that just been mentioned, it is not a we-they situation.
Yeah.
And that's what builds a sense of community, not when you have a we-they kind of situation. The other thing is, we talk about keeping business local. I hope the board keeps that in mind, because I would be very interested in how many of you have stayed at the actual train station. Because if you go to the website, there is a 2-night minimum. You can stay there for between $640 and $900 a night. So we want to be careful about, keeping business local. Do we also want to keep it affordable? Again, if we're really talking community. If we're not talking community and we're just talking about those coming in and making what we can offer them, that's a whole nother topic. But if we're talking community, there should be a sense of affordability. As Susan Brooks so nicely put it in her message to the Bluestone Press, it should not just be for the financially select. And that's how you build a sense of community. You want people to come in, make it affordable. We understand you have to make a profit. That's what business is all about. But let's kind of consider one another as this venture perhaps goes forward. As I said, I'm not totally against it. I'm opposed to some of the size and scope, because my border is right there. Nobody in here is closer to that border than 18 Towpath Road. And I would also suggest to the board that I would appreciate if Richard would come up and talk to me sometime, because I am his nearest neighbor should this project go.
Okay. Are you good, Jay? Okay. I will.
Cool and habits and remedy the soul.
So we have one more comment.
The Airbnb at the train station is for 10 people. It's 8 to 10 people. It's aimed at dance companies or groups. So 650 49, whatever it was, sounds like a lot of money if it were for a couple or something. But it's aimed at 10 people. That's $65 a night. That's not. I'm just saying it has nothing to do with fee. But I feel like that it's a somewhat unfair thing if you think they're aiming at. If you're talking 650 per room, it's up to 650 per room.
There's something like that.
Yeah, but it's for a group. It's a dance student.
Okay, great. I think we've heard from everyone. So the board will be making a decision now about the public hearing moving forward. Thank everyone for your comments and your participation. Everyone on Zoom in the audience and watching at home. I understand there's not a back and forth, and I understand how that feels. The board does consider all the comments. We do research based on the comments. We verify that this is an open forum. We're not fact checking during the public hearing, what people are saying, but we do go back and take a look and consider everything. So thank you. I feel like we do have a lot here. So having said that, what does the board want to do? We can close the verbal comment portion of the meeting and hold it open for written comment to a later date. What's the thinking?
You have to hold it closed permanently for verbal, or we can.
Your choices are, you can continue it, you can close it totally, you can keep it open for written comments for like another week. Whatever you feel, do you feel you've heard everything you need to hear?
I definitely would support holding it open for written, for sure. I don't know what
I
you
think for written too, I think that the applicant should also have a chance to be able to respond to all of the comments we got tonight, and for us to then hear a feedback on that, if anything else changes from this point on, with their plans to give them the chance to respond and get a comment back of their response. So if we want to leave that as just written or it's verbal, I'm happy with any, but I do think if it's written, wise, we need to leave it open.
Yeah, I think having it open for written, I think we can close verbal comments at this point.
Okay, so we have a meeting in a week, we have a meeting in 2 weeks.
Let's keep it
So
open
does
for
someone,
the workshop.
someone want to make a motion?
I will make a motion to leave the written portion of the public hearing open until our workshop meeting on August 10th.
Until the meeting or until?
3 p.m.
Until 3 p.m.
Until
Yeah,
3
until
p.m.
3 p.m.
And the comments go to the town clerk.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Okay.
So we, after this meeting, we have a audit meeting that we might be making some edits to our agenda. So if any, we might be discussing this or we might not, I don't know, but I want to close this meeting, start that meeting where we can actually have something else, because that was not on the agenda. So I'd entertain a motion
I'll make a motion to close,
to adjourn.
or to adjourn, sorry. To adjourn this meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we will.
Let's stretch.
Yeah.
Mr. Martin, I know everyone else called you Jay, probably Hannah also would call you Mr. Martin, but she's